Hi, and welcome to Dime's Block of the Month. I'm PJ Wong, and I'm going to walk you through the block. This month is block number 9, and it's the Wacky Tree. So, for this block, we're going to create our very own artwork because there wasn't one like this in the library that I was able to find. And then the embellishments are really pretty easy. We're going to use built-in designs from my quilt embellisher, and then we're going to bring in an embroidery element here for the star. Okay, so this is a picture of the block. This is the block actually stitched out. And then here's just a little 9-patch layout of the block. So this would be a very fun scrappy quilt, I think. So all right, let's get started. Let's get going with my block piecer and we'll start building our artwork. So I'm going to open a page here and I'm going to put in my boundary just so that I know where I'm building to. So I'm just using the rectangle and I don't need it to be filled. It can be an outline. Oh, I guess it would help if I had that selected when I did that. Sorry. Filled outline. Apply. Okay, and then up here I'm going to take off my maintain aspect ratio because these are not even, and I'm just going to tell this to be 7 and 7. I'm going to right click and say center origin. And my grid right now is set at 1/4 inch spacing and my snap to grid is on. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. So the first thing that I'm going to do is build my borders and then I'm going to build to the inside. So I'm just going to pick up my rectangle tool and up at the top, so my borders are 3/4 of an inch at the top and the bottom, and for this I want this to actually be filled, so I can just say apply to that, and then I can copy and paste this and drag it down to the bottom. And then I'm going to change color. I don't want to use green because I'm going to use green for the tree. So let's choose just something different here. Oops, sorry. Right click to choose that. And then I should still be in my rectangle tool, and this is just for the sides. I didn't quite get that. Just going to snap that into place, and then once again I need to fill this and copy and paste. Okay, so those are my borders. So the next thing that I want to do is start building my tree and my base. So I'm going to start with a rectangle, and I'm going to change this to fill right now and say apply. And this is going to be for the ground, so I'm going to choose a fairly light color here. I just clicked over here to add another color and then I said okay. So I'm going to right click that now and this should come in filled. So I'm snapping to the grid wherever I can. So I'm going to say about there is where I want the tall part of my bottom to be, and then down here I'm just angling this down, and anytime that I can use the snap to grid I'm going to. So I'm going to move that up just a little bit. So one of the things that you need to pay attention to when you're building your own artwork is you can't have anything overlapping. So even though I've drawn this all the way across, I'm pretty quickly going to actually end up modifying that. So my trunk is going to go in here and it's going to go in the center, and once again if I can snap it to a grid I'm going to, and this I can turn it a different color. I'm going to go in and put all my fabrics in here later, so I'm just trying to get my blocks in different colors. So all right, so this, my ground cover, actually needs to be split up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and paste it, and then on one side, oops, I'm going to pick up my shape tool. So on this side I'm going to bring this down to here, and on this side it will snap into place. Then on this side I'm going to basically do the same, by bringing this up to here. And this is one time that you probably are really going to want to zoom in quite closely, because you really need to see where your lines are going. And then this piece now can come down to here and come down to here. And you can see, because I'm not at an actual intersection, it's not snapping into place, which is why you have to really zoom in here and get this quite well lined up. If you're not lined up and there are any gaps, you won't be able to build your block. All right, so there's our base. And if we look at this, we can see our different pieces of artwork. So there's that, and here's this, and there's our trunk. Right. So now we can start building the bottom of our tree. So if we look at this, this is going to go all the way across, and these are just kind of wonky triangles. So I am going to once again just use my rectangle tool, and I'm going to get at least part of that to snap to my grid lines. And I'm going to turn this green, and then I'm going to move this. So this and this is at an intersection. So this one should snap into place right here. And that's going to snap in. So this side wants to come in this way. And this one is going to be shorter, and it's going to come in as well. Okay, so one of the things that we can kind of do to figure out where this is actually going to work out is we can start building some guidelines so we have something to follow. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to just pick up my run tool, and I'm starting way down here somewhere because I'm going to angle this up. I want to leave enough room for our star that's going to be in our sky, so I'm going to come down from here. And actually, if I do this from the top, it will make more sense. So if I go from the top to the bottom here, and then right click to finish that, we could choose a color that you could actually see. And then I can do the same thing here. And once again, my snap to grid is on. So those lines are the lines, I'm going to use those as guidelines. Whoops, sorry, right click. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to zoom into this corner and make sure that I've got the end of this line snapped in the corner correctly. So I want that to snap into there. And the stop and the start for this really doesn't make a difference because I'm really just using this as a guide. So now I can see that this angle line, this piece, my bottom tree piece, needs to come out to that line. So I'm going to zoom way in and just drag that out until I can see that that line is where it should be, because it's matching up to that run line. Okay. And then the same goes for this side. Just going to drag that till it matches up. And I'm zoomed way in here to make sure that I'm getting this correct. Okay, so there's our very first thing. So you're basically just going to continue building until you have 5 sections of your tree. So since we have this kind of funky shape, I'm actually going to copy this and paste it. I'm going to turn it a different color. I'm going to flip it this way and flip it that way. So now our big end is at this end, but the bottom of this should match up because we flipped it. So that's the same as this, upside down and sideways. So I find it's easier just to kind of play with those shapes that way and then readjust others as needed here. And again, I'm going to zoom way in and make sure that that's all lining up the way that it needs to. And then I'll go over to this side and pull this in. So I am basically just going to continue on this process until I get all of my segments built. So I'm going to copy these two segments and literally just shuffle them up and kind of size them and see if I can get them to more. The angles are going to be slightly different, and the top of that tree might be slightly big, so I might want to space these out a little bit more. But the shapes are going to be close, and then you're just going to have to get in here and adjust your lines. All right, so we're almost done here. So for the very top one, I'm just going to pull out a triangle because I know that's basically the shape that I need. Whoops. And I'm just going to snap that into place and then rearrange my points. And once again, I'm going to zoom way in here. Whoops. There we go. Sometimes you need to pull things out of the way so that you can actually see where they're going. And my little point down here is not quite lining up. That one. Okay, so there's my tree. And so now what I'm going to do is I have this run line. I want this run line to continue all the way up to here. There. Okay. So because I need to build this piece. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I'm going to choose another color. I'm going to put another color in here. And I'm going to make this kind of a sky blue. All right, so this is the color I want to use. And I'm going to put my rectangle in starting at the left corner. And I'm going to go to the middle and then down to this intersection. So this really needs to stop here where that stitching line is. This is going to come over to here, and hopefully that line is still intact, which is my other run line here, which I can take that run line out now. It was just a guide. So now I have just this one run line left, which that one can come out also because now I have all of my other parts in here. So what I really need to do is just build this side part, which is basically a triangle. So I'm going to start it up here and go to there and then just delete this corner. And hopefully that should be all correct. And I can see there's a gap up here. So I'm going to need to fix this. And I have the feeling that it's actually this is causing This may not be exactly where it's supposed to be. Oh, so this has to change just a hair. This, when you're creating your own artwork, if you're using shapes that can't easily snap, this is kind of what you have to do because there really isn't another choice. You just have to be careful. Okay, I think that's it. So I should have all my artwork. That I need to delete my very first rectangle that I used for sizing. So I've just selected that off the top and I'm going to say delete. And all my other artwork should be in place now. So I can turn off my grid. There's my artwork. Okay, so if I select all of this and I tell it to auto build, let's see what happens. And really I'm doing this just so that I can check and make sure that it will actually build. Because if you have things that are overlapped, it won't even build. You'll get an error message. So I'm going to say preview, and it's saying invalid solution, please build the tree. Strangely, that's a good sign because that means that I have to put this in order and then it will be fine. If there was something else going on, and let's see if I can actually make it do this, and so just so that you can see what message you'll get. So if I were to change this so that it was, so part of this is overlapping and part of it there's gaps. So if I were to try to do this and try to auto build, oh, whoops, auto build, usually it will kind of sit and spin and then it may actually just freeze up your computer, or it will say no automatic solution found, please manually build the tree. Normally that means you just need to manually build, but even sometimes when you've got a gap in there, it's because there's a gap. So just know that. I'm going to fix that, but I am going to manually build this tree. So if we go up here and we choose our reorder, I'm going to start here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll go here 9, 10, and then 11, 12, 13, and 14. And we'll be able to build all of that in one hoop. So I'm just going to select everything now, go to my workflow, give it my seam allowance. Okay, so if we look at the preview on this, it's telling us, even though we sorted it correctly, that it's having to build in a whole bunch of different sections. We actually know that that's not the case. So we are going to go back up here. We're going to say close to this, and we're going to go back to here, and I'm going to go up here to unit. Sorry, I'm going to change my seam allowance first, and then up here at unit, I'm going to say reset. So now it's got the order that we put in. So we're going to go through here and we're going to group this just like we did with the storm geese block. So I've selected the first one. I'm holding down my control key. I'm selecting the second one and then selecting with a left click and then right click and to group it, and then left click, right click, group, left, right, group. So I'm going to do this all the way down to everything except the last one. Okay, so that's everything. I've got my seam allowance, and now I can tell this to auto build. Actually, nope, not auto build. I can just tell this to preview. And there's our block all in one. Okay, so all I have to do now is save this. So I'm just going to choose save. I'm going to go in here to, and this should take you to your C dime designs. So here's your C dime designs. And in mine, I've got a 2018 block of the month. And here I'm just going to put, this is my 9 block, Wacky tree, and hit the save button. And I can close that now. Oh, I forgot to preview my fabrics. We'll do that again. Okay, sorry about that. We're gonna audition our fabrics first. Got so excited about having my block done. Okay, so and auditioning the fabrics shouldn't affect how this whole thing is going to stitch. It's just going to affect how everything looks. So let's just go in here and do this, and we should be able to just resave the artwork. So I'm going in here to my fabrics and my beach sewing, and I think I have the trunk as the gray check because I don't have anything brown in this collection. And then the two pieces at the bottom, I used my white on white scissor fabric. That was my snow. And then my sky, I think I used the blue scissors as my sky. And then for every other one of my tree, let's look at the picture. So yeah, so I used the green scissors for every other of the three and then dots for the others. So, oops. So for this set, I'm going to use green. So these were green scissors. And then for these two, I used dots. I think I was trying to emulate Christmas or something. I think I might have used this one. I think that's a different one, but that's pretty cute too. Okay, and then borders. So for our borders, we did yellow and pink. So pink on the sides. So I'm going to select both of those at the same time. And then go in here, and those were, I think those were pink checks. And then yellow at the top and the bottom. All right. There's my yellow check. There's my yellow check. Okay, so now our artwork is all set up. So, okay, so I just want to resave the artwork because I don't need to redo any of the others. So I can just go up here and say File, Save As, and I should be able to come in here and find my Wacky Tree, and here's Wacky Tree artwork, and then just choose Save. And it's going to say, do you want to replace that? Why, yes, I do. Okay, so, all right, so we're ready to start our embellishment. So I'm switching over to my Quilt Embellisher. I'm going to open a page, and I'm going to go to my designs, and I am going to go to Wacky Tree. And here is my new artwork with all of my fabrics. So, all right. So basically what we're going to do here, this section, the whole middle section is just stippled. So I'm going to do that first, and what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to take the rectangle and just drag a rectangle to this shape. And I'm going to go to my sequence bar and grab that and tell that I want that to be stippling. Okay? And I can give that a different color. I'll give it kind of a lighter color. And I want that stippling, so if I turn that off and I turn this to a different color so you can actually see it, that stippling's pretty tight. And I actually want my stippling, there's a true view of that. So I don't want my stippling to be quite that tight. So I'm going to try 10. That's a little too big, maybe 8. Maybe 6. There we go. I'm going to say that looks pretty good. I want some stippling in there, but not tons. And then I'm going to change that back to white. Oh, I guess it would help if I had that selected. There we go. Okay, so there's my stippling. So now I am going to turn these guys back on. And I'm going to turn this grid settings, I'm going to make these 5. Oh, actually, no, I want these at 0.375 because I want to know where the halfway is of my borders, because those borders are 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to select this and tell it to center. Oh, nope, I don't want to center that. I want this here so I can tell where my halfway point is. Here and here, and then I'm going to recenter it for the bottom. Is that making sense? Because these are 3/8 inch grids and this is 3/4 of an inch. So here's the halfway point here and here's the halfway point here. But on this, it's not sitting correctly in the grid. So I'm going to do this, and then I'll reposition to do this and this. All right. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to draw a line from here to here. Then I'm going to select all of this again, and I'm just going to move this to a grid. So now I can do this side and this side. And I'm using the grid to snap those into place. So now that my lines are in there and they're all correct, I can just do Control A and select everything, and now I can recenter everything again. Is that making sense there? So I've got my lines where I want them, so they're just not necessarily in the order that I want. So I'm going to select my side lines because I want those to actually stitch first. Whoops. That line and this line. And I'm going to turn those green, and then these 2 lines I'm going to turn purple, and I'm going to get these so that they're all sitting together. So here are my 2 sides, and here are, oops, I take that back. There's my sides. Here's my top and bottom. And I do want my sides to stitch first, so that's correct. All right, so I'm going to choose my side designs, and then I'm going to come up here to my motif run, and I'm going to choose a motif that I want to work in here. So there are tons of different motifs in here, fun things to play with. I want something fairly simple. This guy might work pretty well. That's not too bad. I want it to fill most of the space in that 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. Let's try 13. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to zoom in on this. I'd say that looks really good. So the other thing to pay attention to is how long your stitches get. Depending on the motif, sometimes your stitches can be quite long, and you wouldn't want that. So here, this stipple stitch I think was a default of a 3.5 millimeter. Yeah, so you can tell here these stitches aren't really any longer than these stitches. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So for our top design, I can go back up here and I could choose the same design, or I could choose something different. So let's see what else we've got in here. There's all kinds of things to choose from. So let's see here. And some of these may not be, like these are candle wicking. Actually, that's not too bad. If we zoom in, again, one of the things you have to look for is how long the stitches are. And if you go up here into view and you turn on the stitch ends and you turn off the realistic view, you could also turn off your the background image. So here you can see from here to here, that's a really long stitch. And if we measure that, that's almost 1/4 of an inch. That's not horrendously long, but it could be a little bit of a snag hazard. So that may not be the best solution for that particular scenario. So we can just try some other things. This one's actually, I think, pretty good. Yeah. I think that one's not bad at all. And you can see here, so the stitches here, if you measure from here to here, just over 1/8 of an inch. So that's actually perfect. All right. I'm going to merge in my star, and this should be in the same place that you have all of your other designs. The star file will come along with the PDFs for the step-by-step instructions and all of that information. So wherever it is that you've housed that information, that's where you're going to find this. So I'm going to go into my Wacky tree, and here's my star, and I'm going to say open, and then I'm just going to drag this into position at the top of my tree. And there's our little star. So now what we want to do is make sure that this is stitching in the order that we like. So that's our stippling. Our sides are going to stitch, and then our top and bottom, and then our star. Actually, I'm going to have my star stitch right after my stippling. There we go. So then, once again, the last thing that we want to add to this is our basting border. So once again, with my rectangle, I'm just dragging this to the size of my square. I'm going to move that to stitch first, and I'm going to turn it a color like no other in my design. So I'm going to choose this gold, and I'm going to turn that into stitches, and I'm going to make that a 5.0 stitch and say apply. And then I'm going to save this file as my embellishment file. So file, save as. So once again, here's my Wacky tree. I'm just going to select the piecing file but change the name and say save to that. Then I'll combine the two together. I'll open up my Wacky tree block piecing. All right, so I'm going to copy from my basting border all my embellishments, copy that back to my piecing file and paste that on top. I'm going to adjust my border to match with the piecing file border. I'm going to turn off my stitch ends because it can get kind of confusing. Okay, so that my basting border has been adjusted. We're ready to go. So all we have to do is save this as Wacky Tree All because it's both files together. Okay, so that's it for the piecing and the embellishment. Let's take one last look at the blocks. So here's the 9-patch layout. Here's the stitched block. And then here's the image once again. Okay, hope you have fun with that one. We'll see you next month. Thanks.